Hades here. In this video, we're going to get started with some head studies, starting with understanding the structure of the skull. To be honest, I wasn't sure if I should even make this video. As you can see here, I'm scrolling through so many head drawing videos, and I'm just left wondering if there's anything I can add. Hopefully this video can offer you something a little different. My goal here is to be able to draw appealing character heads, so I'll show you how I'll get there. So I'm going to build up my way to drawing the skull without ref in a believable way. So let's start off by getting some parts of the skull down. So there's about 22 bones that make up the skull, but we only really need to know a handful of those to help us paint and draw the head. And as you can see, the head is longer on the side than the front. So try and remember these landmarks. I tend to forget names, but I can easily remember shapes. You'll probably know this already, but starting from the hairline, we can break the front of the skull down into thirds as a guide. And of course this can vary, but it's easy to remember. To find the corner of the jaw, we can take the bottom third of the skull, or the base of the nose to the chin, break that into thirds to find where that corner starts. And it starts at the bottom third, as you can see here. The ends of the mouth can be found by finding the halfway point of the eye sockets. The base of the cheekbone and nose line up with the base of the skull. The tip of the nasal bone lines up with the halfway point of the eye sockets. As you can see from a side view, you can see the nasal bone is further out than the eye sockets, so that's something we have to account for when drawing the skull in perspective. The bottom of the eye socket lines up with this particular part of the zygomatic bone. I'm not really sure what it's called, but you can see what I mean here. Zygomatic arch, maybe? I'm not really sure. Lastly, the outer edges of the eye socket can be used to find the jaw. And take note of how the cheekbones are the outermost part of the front view. Let's briefly take a look at how perspective can help us when trying to draw without ref. We have center lines, which is just a contour line tracing the middle of a symmetrical object. I just use this so that I can compare how much of each side of an object that I can see. You'll see me use this when we're breaking down references. And you can use various parts of the skull to check your perspective, like the brown line, chin, cheekbones should all be going to the same vanishing point. The face is curved, of course, but you can imagine using the endpoint to the curves. As you can see here, I drew this particular skull without reference, and I can see where I went wrong. So here is how I've chosen to simplify the skull. I've chosen to stick with most of the straight lines so that it's easier to find the perspective, and you can always come back and add organic curves afterwards. I personally struggle quite a bit with drawing the mouth, but I find imagining a ball to draw over helps. And of course, you don't have to copy my simplification. In fact, I'd encourage you to find your own, finding out what works best for you. Now I'm going to draw some skulls using the simplification. I always start with a Loomis sort of construction, but I use an egg shape rather than a circle, unless it's a front view. Circles don't really work from a side view. The back of the head ends up being too short. I guess you could use a circle, but just be sure to add extra. All these skulls here are without reference, apart from one. One of them, in my opinion, doesn't look very good. Okay, so that's some theory. For reference, I found this user on Sketchfab, goes by the name VAA, and they have loads of 3D models for studying the head. I've been using this to study from. It's a really great resource. I'll leave a link down below, so definitely check that out. And if you're having trouble just drawing the Loomis head, you can also find 3D models for that too. Although I couldn't find one that used an egg shape for the cranium. So I've gone ahead and taken some screenshots of the 3D model from different angles to study from. And we'll break these down using the simplification. And for this exercise, I'd recommend aiming for 10 minutes, a breakdown and redraw. I've managed to work my way down to 5 minutes. sometimes faster. And of course, speed isn't everything, but having that timer will help you not think too much, and it will help with getting that repetition in. So starting off by finding the egg shape of the cranium and the side of the head. And you can see that blue line that I've drawn. That's me comparing how much of the front of the head I'm seeing compared to the side of the head. I then find the line for the front of the face, where the mouth ends. I continue finding the other landmarks based on my simplification. And lastly, that center line. I can see that we're not seeing much of the far side of the face, so I'll keep that in mind when I'm doing my redraw. My redraw here is facing a bit of a different angle, and that's okay. I'll still try and make it work. Getting the angle correct in a short amount of time is a bit challenging. If your redraw is really off, then of course, do it again and see where you went wrong. This time we have an up tilt. It's really challenging trying to do this all in 5 minutes, but I did this at least 100 times before making this video. I can definitely say it's improved my understanding of the structure of the skull. So definitely don't feel bad if you mess up. It's just part of the process. A more extreme up tilt here. I mostly chose angles that I struggle with, but it's important to remember that for the most part you're probably not going to be drawing heads in these extreme angles, but it's still good practice. I think I find these down tilts the most challenging. Something to keep in mind as you do these, those thirds that break down the face, those should change. Like here for instance, the third from the hairline to the brow should be longer than the third that goes from the base of the nose to the chin. And that's just keeping things in line with the perspective. Or in other words, foreshortening. And again, you can see here, I don't have a perfect copy, and that's okay because I'm still learning too. A bit of an easier angle this time. Whichever angles you find challenging, be sure to do those over and over again. These back views are always a bit awkward for me to figure out, because often if you can see the features of the front of the face, they're very small compared to the rest of the head. The goal here isn't to draw beautiful skulls, it's just to understand it. I keep hearing how from professional artists that learning the structure of the skull was the one thing that really improved their head drawings. Okay, so once you've done a handful of breakdowns and you feel ready, I'd encourage you to start trying to draw some skulls with that reference. And then you can check yourself by using the 3D model, seeing where you went wrong. Maybe the jaw was too short, maybe the nasal bone was too low, whatever it may be. Eventually you'll get to a point where your skulls with that reference will be very believable. You just need to get that repetition in, and some knowledge of perspective wouldn't hurt. Before making this video, I challenged myself to draw 100 skulls with that reference, and I learned a lot from doing that, because it really tested my understanding of the structure of the skull. And of course I still find those extreme angles quite difficult, but I've now made progress. If you've watched my video on the simple box rotations, and then the exercise I did towards the end, I'm doing that here, but with the skull. But that'll be it for this video. I hope I was able to add some value to the vast library of head drawing videos on YouTube. Next time we'll look at the facial features and how they relate to the skull. If this was helpful, leave a like and subscribe to follow the rest of my art development. You can find my creative work on Instagram, and I'll see you all in the next one.